I have a twin brother, and I am 28 years old. My twin brother and I received rather different parenting styles when we were children. For some reason, my parents honestly appeared persuaded that my brother was destined for greatness, and that I was the black sheep, since I preferred to play sports and make new friends over academics. They were often making comparisons between us, which was discouraging and damaged my self-worth from an early age. When I was a kid, I had to watch my brother and his friends get lavish birthday parties while I was ignored. While I was never even permitted to invite my friends back to our home, he frequently had sleepovers with his pals. I hated every second of my childhood, to be honest. My grandma was the only family member who appeared to be concerned about me. She usually brought my favorite chocolates when she came to visit, and sometimes she would sneak me a few bucks so I could indulge myself later. This obvious preference for my twin brother grew over the years, eventually turning into emotional abuse aimed at me. My parents used to publicly make fun of my grades and my interests. It seemed like I would never be able to live up to their ideal of the ideal child, no matter how hard I tried. Despite my athletic prowess, they forbade me from engaging in extracurricular activities, because they wanted me to focus solely on my education, much like my brother. As a youngster, it was frustrating, and I felt powerless. Later, during my sophomore year, I was grounded once again for using Snapchat on my phone. Apart from using this program to keep in touch with my pals, like most teens my age, I had done nothing illegal at all. But since my parents had prevented me from talking to my friends, they felt that this was a serious crime and a betrayal of their confidence. They lost it all and scattered my belongings all over the place. After removing my doors from their hinges, they informed me that I would not be able to live in solitude as long as I shared their roof. My twin brother didn't help me as I was seeing my parents mistreat me. On the contrary, he made things worse. He was able to take advantage of the poisonous atmosphere that our parents' unfair behavior had created. He developed a habit of fabricating stories about me and accusing me of crimes I never committed in order to get away with everything. He might easily assign responsibility to me if he stole something, and my parents, who were already inclined to think the worst of me, would fall for his falsehoods. He used to make fun of my appearance and insult me in front of my schoolmates. In spite of this, I was friendly and willing to socialize, so I had a large group of friends in school. However, my twin suffered with social anxiety and began to feel resentful that I was able to talk to people while he felt uncomfortable as an introvert. When no one came up for him at our 14th birthday celebration, this jealousy boiled over. On the other hand, my friends took me out for ice cream, and I had a great day altogether. I'm not sure why his friends did it to him. My brother was much more enraged by this. My brother started spreading untrue stories about me at school, calling me a spoilt brat, as a form of retaliation. He made up the story that I was physically assaulting him at home and told everyone about it. Unbeknownst to me, he pushed things to a worrying degree to falsify proof since our parents loved him more. He would intentionally cause injuries to himself, such as a black eye or bruised shoulder, by punching himself. When our parents questioned him about the injuries, he would fabricate tales and proudly show off his self-inflicted wounds as evidence of my alleged aggression. Lying, he would blame it on careless pursuits, like playing football with his pals. People started to believe his twisted version of events as lies, and his said black eyes gained popularity. Not very long after, rumors began to spread, and even my friends started to treat me suspiciously. I initially noticed small adjustments. Friends who used to hang out with me in the corridor abruptly stopped talking to me. Invites to get-togethers for drinks dwindled in frequency. People were reluctant to connect with the purportedly pampered girl who was accused of aggression, as if a switch had been flicked. I finally plucked up the bravery to ask my former best buddy why our relationship had soured. She revealed that my twin brother had been spreading false information about me. She exposed the specific falsehoods he'd told everyone, making false accusations against me that I had never committed. She said something that surprised me. It seemed as if the ground gave apart underneath me, a mixture of bewilderment and betrayal. Growing up, I lived with my brother, who was spreading false information about me and accusing me of things I would never even consider committing. I had a knot in my gut and a heavy heart because of the deep-cut betrayal. That day after school, I addressed my brother, but he decided to ignore me. I begged him to stop lying about me, but he gave me a smug look and said I was worthless. His lies and actions were beginning to frighten me, so much so that I was at a loss for words. I was scared that my parents would think more of my brother than of me when I wanted to talk to them. It hurt to be alone, especially because I'd always been kind to new people. It seemed as though the relationships I had cultivated over the years were being destroyed by my brother's falsehoods, laced with envy. Teachers started to hear about the rumors as well. I got the strangest feeling, like I was in an other world, where my own twin's false narratives were more important than who I really was. The falsehoods were becoming more than just adolescent gossip. They were influencing people's real perceptions of me. My biggest worry came true when the unpleasant gossip soon got to my principal. I was brought into the principal's office right away, along with my brother and our parents, to talk about these said rumors. Heart palpitating, I sat there as the principal insisted on the facts. I thought my brother would at last tell the truth, but he continued to tell lies. He informed the principal directly that the stories were accurate and depicted me as a bully who would beat him up when his parents weren't there. It was too good to be true. My brother kept telling this bizarre tale about how I was upset with him because our parents were showing him more affection, and as he did, shock overcame me. He clung tenaciously to his tale, even though it was all a falsehood. As my brother told his story, my mother started crying and clinging to him like a hero. My dad made an effort to console my brother by telling him that speaking out was brave, and that he would make sure the worst never happened to him. I attempted to justify myself after that day, begging the principal that it was all in my head. Despite my frantic attempts to rise from what felt like an overwhelming sea of allegations, my brother persisted that I was just an angry, aggressive person, venting my emotions on him on a daily basis. With accusatory glances in her eyes, my mother's tears did not stop as she grabbed onto my brother. It seemed like I was up against a wall of my brother's invented narrative. I received a severe rebuke from my principal, who said that I may expect to be suspended because the school did not allow bullying. He shook his head and said he couldn't just let it go, despite my pleas that he not suspend me. I tried to convince him that I hadn't done anything to harm my brother as I pleaded him, tears rolling down my cheeks. In order to set a bad example for others and discourage them from bullying others, the principal sternly informed me that I would be suspended for 10 days. It really got to me, and I began to cry even more, pleading with him to think again. I was pulled out of the principal's office by my parents, who were upset and ashamed about the whole thing. I was averse to leaving. They were not buying into my attempts to explain myself and convince them of my point of view. With a heavy heart from embarrassment and frustration, we departed the school. After we arrived home, everything changed drastically. Suddenly, my dad started packing my belongings. I was unaware of what was going on and was astonished and perplexed. He simply yelled that he couldn't allow me to live in the same house as my brother any longer when my mother asked him what he was doing. I was sobbing, almost to the point of tears, and begging my brother to be honest with them, but he remained detached and unfazed. After finishing the packing of my belongings, my dad dumped the suitcase into our entryway. I continued to beg my dad not to kick me out as I grabbed to his leg. It like a nightmare coming to life. He informed me that a bully like me had no business living in his home, and that if my grandma wanted to come get me, he would arrange for her to do so. It seemed as though everything had collapsed underneath me. I was shocked to find myself ejected from my own house and surrounded by my possessions strewn over the entryway. My grandma did eventually appear. She collected everything I needed, helped me get it into the car, and got me settled into the passenger seat. She checked to make sure I fastened my seatbelt before proceeding to my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell, and as soon as my dad answered, she began berating him for mistreating me. She was determined to tell him that what he had done to a youngster like me might have him locked up, so if he ever came near me or attempted to get in touch with me again, she wouldn't think twice about calling the police or CPS. In an effort to shift the responsibility, My mother informed her that it was her fault. But my grandma would have none of it. She remained firm, protecting me and stating that I was only a young child and didn't deserve to be handled such callously. For the first time in my life, I experienced my grandmother's power. In contrast to what my parents thought, she trusted me and didn't kowtow down to them. After a while, we got in the car and left my house behind, the only place I had ever lived. I have no idea how to express the unfathomable anguish I was experiencing at the time. I recall not eating anything even though my grandma begged me to, and instead I simply cried on the bed. She was astounded when I told her what my brother had done. She told me she thought I had a good narrative, and I felt relieved to have one person on my side at least. The thought of going back to school after the 10 days of suspension ended was like walking back into a lion's lair. The looks on my students' faces as I walked down the well-known halls said volumes about them. Sidelong stares, murmurs, and judgment. The bogus allegations' weight persisted in hanging over everyone. My brother, meanwhile, pretended that I didn't exist and openly disregarded me. He had made friends with a few of people who bought into his tale, viewing him as the innocent victim of my attacks. I tried telling everyone my side of the tale, but it was always met with silence. I was a misfit, marked with a false identity that hung over me like a shadow. Everywhere I looked, in the cafeteria, the classroom, the hallways, I saw contempt and suspicion in the eyes of those around me. I started to isolate myself. I used to focus, go to all of my courses, eat lunch by myself in the cafeteria, and then head straight home. I didn't have any friends, and I got the impression that nobody really wanted me there. Not once did my parents give me a call to see how I was doing during this whole ordeal. My grandma would tell me over and over again that this was nothing to do with me, and that everything will work out in the end. After earning decent marks in high school, I was eager to start college in the hopes of leading a better life. I never really knew what independence felt like until I moved away to attend college. It was my first time without an observer behind my back. Nobody was attempting to outperform me or compare my grades to others. I made acquaintances with like-minded folks after meeting them. I focused on moving past my family's and my friends' mental and physical wounds from the years and making the most of my college experience, despite the damage they had caused. It was around this time that I realized how good I was at writing content. Though I wasn't sure if it would be a long-term career path, I had always wanted to be a writer. I thus made the decision to give up on my ambition, but I also started writing for pay as a freelancer. I joined a number of freelance websites, which helped me land contracts with well-known companies. I began gradually compiling a portfolio of my work in this manner. I continued my side business throughout college, and never once approached my parents for money. After graduating, I realized I could pursue content writing as a full-time career, rather than working for a corporation. Because I had several clients and established professional ties with them, I was able to be involved in a number of projects and was doing really well. In addition to providing me with financial independence, having a successful freelance profession enabled me to live and travel as a digital nomad. Traveling was undoubtedly difficult, but it helped me get past my past. I invested in myself and saved as much as I could. I have seen a lot of the globe over the years, but there is still a lot I have not seen. Throughout it all, my grandma was the only person I thought of as family, and I loved her to pieces. Although she was devastated when I moved out, she recognized that I had to become self-sufficient. I would always make it a point to be there for her, no matter how busy I was. On the weekends, I would go see her, and we would frequently have meals together, or just sit on the porch and talk about everything from recent events to childhood stories. I used to spend whole weekends assisting her with housework, or going for long walks with her at the neighborhood park. I recently completed one of the most significant initiatives of my professional life. I was really fortunate to write blogs and product descriptions for a business that I am unable to name. I asked the team I worked with to post favorable evaluations on my website when the job was over, and they were more than pleased to comply. Since I was aware that collaborating with this brand was really important, I then collected photos of a few of their reviews to share on Instagram. As was to be anticipated, A number of other content writers got in touch with me to wish me well in my career, and even shared my tale to encourage others to read it. That's how I started receiving messages from random people who were in need of website assistance. Several of my relatives contacted me to congratulate me after noticing this as well. Eventually, my former principal got in touch with me. Upon realizing how successful I was, he got in touch with me and asked me to speak at a lecture at the college to students about launching a content writing profession. Since I struggle with public speaking, I was really anxious, but I chose to take a chance and consented. It seemed like my life had gone full circle while I was sharing my experiences and insights in front of interested people. During my speech, I discussed my challenges and how I persevered through all of the difficult times to support myself. Honestly, helping to strengthen the community of writers and encourage others was a really rewarding experience. A few of my videos went popular on Facebook groups because they struck a chord with people. Having my hard work finally acknowledged made me feel fantastic. I received an invitation to talk on a local news program last week. They asked me to share my experience and ideas with their audience on a show they were doing about the advantages of content writing. I was thrilled about the chance, even if I was a little anxious. I discussed my experiences, the value of customer testimonials, and how a straightforward message of gratitude may lead to amazing possibilities throughout the event. It was both humble and thrilling to have the chance to encourage more people in the profession and speak to a larger audience. I was honored to be invited to a TV show, so I posted some of these snippets on Instagram when it eventually aired. This is how my cousins and family first learned about my professional success. You see, my parents were unaware that I was doing work for well-known businesses and receiving invitations to TV shows, as they never discussed me with anybody. This is how my family's message got around rapidly. A few days later, I was working on another project and had my phone on quiet, so I believe my parents eventually saw this TV interview. Upon finishing my job, I looked at my phone and was shocked to see that my mother had missed 6 calls. It had been a very long time since she had phoned, so I was rather surprised to see her name on my phone. I had no idea why she was phoning me after all those years of quiet. With hesitation, I gave her a call again, and she answered right away. My mother began congratulating me as soon as I asked her whether everything was all right. My dad joined in on the talk as well, most likely seated next to Mom. He began asking me questions about my life and general well-being, and I answered them thoughtlessly. I didn't think it was strange at first until they started inquiring about my current salary. My dad said that since we were family, I shouldn't be ashamed to reveal them my income when I told them it was none of their concern. I informed them of my financial success. My eyebrows pinched in skepticism as my mom started talking about how difficult their life was these days after hearing this. Basically, here is a general account of our conversation. We have now retired. For some time now, we had been wishing to remodel the house. We don't have any more money, but it's in decent condition. All right, your achievement has offered us hope. We thought that perhaps you might assist us out by covering the cost of the renovations after seeing your TV interview today. We are a family after all. Don't be afraid to give us a portion of your earnings. We truly need your assistance. Are you making me laugh? Since you haven't spoken to me in years, why are you requesting money from me? I'm not sure why you reached out to me, and although I'm grateful for the congrats, I won't be able to assist you in any way. My mother began to tell me that I was being a bad child, and that I should provide for them as a family after hearing this. My dad also said that this was the least I could do, because as my parents, they should be taken care of. I wanted to slap them in the face because I was so furious about this. Suddenly it occurred to me that, rather than just argue with them, I need to give them a lesson for believing, after all these years, that they could get away with mistreating me. I made it clear to my parents that I would only assist them if they complied with my requests. With curiosity, my father asked me what it was. I made my demands clear right away. If they wanted my assistance, they had to come clean and acknowledge in front of our loved ones that my brother was the one who had started the damaging stories that had damaged my name. I wanted them to disgrace my brother in the same public manner that they had disgraced me by falling for his deceit and manipulation. I wanted them to own up to the hurt they had caused and accept responsibility for their actions. My dad started to wonder if it was really necessary to make such an admission after hearing my onerous conditions. I stood my ground when my mother informed me that we could have a private conversation without including everyone else, and that this was all really needless. This was a necessity for any future help they desired from me, and it was not negotiable. My dad became more assertive as the strain increased, emphasizing that it was my responsibility to support my family when they were in need. In a desperate attempt, my mother reminded me of the years they had spent raising me, and pleaded with me to act morally and assist them. Irony was inevitable in their abrupt appeal, in my opinion. I reminded them of the past, that I had been reared by my grandmother, not by them, and that they had expelled me. They became more and more irritated, but I told them flatly that if they wanted to come in touch with me and ask for my money going forward, then the truth had to be said out loud, and my brother had to pay for what he had done. My folks have been phoning me non-stop since this discussion, but I'm not picking up. I'm beginning to feel guilty for even returning their call that day. If I didn't provide my parents any assistance at all, would I truly be an a-hole? First update. Since I last published my story a week ago, a lot has happened, and I am really grateful for everyone's support and encouragement. Knowing I'm not alone gives me hope. I'm relieved that, at this point, everyone feels that, given everything they've done for me, I shouldn't interact with my parents, or even think about lending a hand. I knew it was nearly difficult for them to do, which is why I even set such a condition for them. Even if they may have realized by now that it was all a lie, I know they love my brother too much, and they will never subject him to the same abuse that they subjected me to. My brother texted me an unpleasant message today since I didn't answer my parents' calls when they tried to reach me again. What he wrote was this: "Hey sis, it's been a while since I saw you, but I can assure you that life has been amazing every day without you. I've heard that when your parents tried to reach out to you, you offered them an absurd ultimatum. You already know that they won't follow through with it. They will never hurt me, and it is obvious that they never loved you. I'll confess that I lied to you about 15 years ago, but it was a very long time ago. So give up being so self-centered and make an effort to let the past go. Why don't you wish to support them by covering their home repairs and renovations when you were already single and childless? Act morally and become a better daughter." The message was like a knife to my chest when I saw it. His lack of empathy was evident in his arrogance in dismissing the difficulties I had encountered and the standards I had set. There was an additional degree of insensitivity when they tried to guilt-trip me by highlighting the fact that I am single and childless. Not only was his suggestion that I needed to put their needs ahead of my own was hurtful, but it also showed how little he valued my opinion. I felt it was time to take matters into my own hands and uncover the truth that had been kept concealed for far too long, driven by frustration and a deep need for justice. I took a seat and began writing an email to my parents and other close family members, describing the traumatic events of my early years and the unfair treatment I had received at my family's home. I wrote in the email about growing up in a harsh and controlling household, and how my parents treated me differently from my twin brother. The email went into detail about the false and destructive story my brother had started about me in school, which had damaged my reputation and resulted in dire repercussions. I wrote about how my grandma saved me from being a homeless person when my parents booted me out. I requested everyone to read a note that my brother had sent me toward the end. He acknowledged to lying about me in the screenshot I've shared. It was an obvious admission, and I hoped that it would reveal the lies that had been kept too long. Just an hour ago, I sent the email, and I already know that as soon as my brother and dad saw it, everything will go crazy. Next, I'll let you know how my family responds to my email. Second update. Since my last update, which was 1 month ago, a lot has transpired. My family did, as you might guess, blow out when they saw the email. Relatives who were previously ignorant of the severity of the emotional abuse and partiality have criticized my parents. Many family members apologized for not being there for me and informed me that they were unaware of anything. I decided to contact a lawyer after receiving a constant stream of abusive and violent texts from my brother and parents. The lawyer issued a cease and desist letter to them. In essence, he told them not to get in touch with me again. Should they do so, they would be subject to severe legal repercussions. They must have been so terrified by this that they ceased getting in touch with me. My grandma fully supports me and believes that my telling everyone about what occurred was the correct thing to do. Since she is the one person that matters to me, I'm relieved that she has my support. Third update. 2 months have passed since my previous update. For the time being, I'm delighted to say that everything in my life is going smoothly. My article writing business has been doing really well professionally. I'm getting more and more requests to speak at conferences and podcasts, which confirms my standing as an authority in my field. My granny and I are close as ever. Recently, I took a week off from work to spend more time with her. She is teaching me a lot about the different flowers and herbs in her yard, because she is into gardening these days. My best and most treasured memories are of the times I spent with Mom, whether we were eating together, having meaningful talks, or just spending time together. I am relieved that my family is avoiding me in light of the letter they received from my attorney. They have not been in touch with me since. I've begun attending to therapy in the hopes of working toward my own recovery. This, I believe, is the final